Well, let's get more on all this now from Matt Bryden, the Executive Chairman of Sahan Research and a former coordinator for the UN Monitoring Group on Somalia and Eritrea. Matt, thank you very much for your time. Good to see you. It's a week now then since the attack on Kenyan forces, and still there's very little official information from the Kenyan government. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it has taken some time for the Kenyan government to be able to deploy troops to the area and to actually take stock of the damage. But it's fair to say, I think, at this stage that this is it's the third attack of its kind. AlShabaab has conducted similar operations against Ugandan forces, Burundian forces, and now the Kenyan forces. Very similar operations against small forward operating bases, overrunning them, killing many of the soldiers involved. And so it's not something new. But it does raise questions about what the African Union forces in Somalia need to do to strengthen their defenses and to rethink their strategy for engaging AlShabaab.
Can you just explain to us then how effective the campaign against AlShabaab is and who's carrying it out?
Well, in some ways it's been enormously effective. Kenyan troops, for example, took the Somali port of Kismayo from AlShabaab, which was a source of over $100 million worth of revenue every year, and in so doing reduced AlShabaab from an existential threat to Somalia and a very dire threat to the countries of the region to in a sense, a nuisance, a very violent and worrying nuisance, but no longer one that actually threatens the very existence of states of the region. On the other hand, having done that, Shabab has proven enormously resilient and persistent. It continues to conduct operations at much the same tempo over the last 2 years. It has now proved itself over the last 6 months or so capable of mounting conventional attacks on African Union and Somali forces. And so we're at a sort of plateau in which the campaign against AlShabaab, if it hasn't stalled, it isn't making obvious progress, and AlShabaab is taking advantage of that space to now seize the initiative and launch attacks against African Union forces and also against civilian targets like the Beachview Hotel in Mogadishu, as you've just seen.
So ultimately then, what is AlShabaab's objective in the region?
Well, AlShabaab used to be a Somali group. It's now increasingly a regional organization with aspirations that go beyond Somalia, and its membership is much wider than Somalia now. It has Kenyan, Ugandan, Tanzanian, and Ethiopian components, and it very explicitly makes it clear that it wants to redraw the map of the Horn of Africa and East Africa. It wants to reclaim what it calls Muslim lands in neighboring countries and establish its own rule. Which of course it calls Sharia, but I think many Muslims would contest that definition. And so it is now escalating its conflict to the regional level. It's doing so quite effectively, and it has attacked not only Somalia but also all of Somalia's neighbors plus Uganda. And that is where AlShabaab clearly now sees its mission as a jihad within the entire East African region.
Okay, Matt, thank you very much for your time and thank you for the insight.